Welcome to On the Prowl, Florida Panthers Mailbag Q&A, episode 13. I'm your host, Bill. Today we're going to go ahead. I had a number of questions submitted to me over the past several weeks, so I thought I'd like to go ahead and do a mailbag Q&A episode today. Before we dive into that, I want to let everybody know we will be going to our first game this year on November the 14th against the Devils, and maybe I could meet a few of you there, and we'll have some details posted on that out on Twitter. So stay tuned as you take a look on that. So let's go ahead and dive into this mailbag Q&A. First question: if the Panthers are playing well, what signs do you look for? Now, one of the first things you look for are fast breakouts out of their own zone. And that's really hockey 101, but that's something that Paul Maurice preaches is he doesn't want to have them spend a lot of time in their own zone. They want to have quick exits out of their own zone. So that's one of the things that you look for. Number two is they're aggressive on the forecheck. They just don't dump the pucks in. They go in and they follow up, and they're hitting people against the boards. They're aggressive. They're physical. That's absolutely important for them to be on their game. And another thing that you note, too, is when they're really dialed in, they have crisp passing. It's tape to tape, stick to stick. You can almost hear it at times. It's so crisp. And that's one of the signs that you look for as well. And one of the other ones is Bob is dialed in. When Sergei's dialed in, he's clicking, and the defense will play appropriately as well for him too. And it's a sign. These are all signs, I think, when the Panthers are playing well. You'll see all of these things. Of course, I'm just breaking it down on this list. There's a lot more things here, but I just wanted to put several items up here for you guys to go ahead and note. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the next question here. Question: how is Sam Reinhart so good? Wow, the whole NHL wants to know that. It just seems, how does he do what he does? And I thought I would break it down here with these 4 points. The first one, and these are in random order. These aren't in order of importance or anything. Number one, he positions himself well out on the ice. When he scores goals, he always seems to be in the right position at the right time. And that ties in with number two, great anticipation. He communicates well with his line mates. More often than not, he's been paired up a lot with Sasha Barkov and Erod, and he anticipates what they're going to be doing. And of course, we all know Barkov is so good with his passing, and just an incredible anticipation with him as well. One of the things that a lot of people don't talk about, but they should, is Sam Reinhart has an extremely accurate shot. He is a grade A sniper when it comes to shooting the puck. He finds corners, he finds holes, he finds spaces there where a lot of players, when they take those kind of shots, they're going to hit the glass or be way off. He's very accurate. And the last one is he's on an exceptional line. I mean, to be more often than not, he's been on a lot on the line with Barkov and Erod, and that has bowed him very well. They seem to communicate real well. They have great chemistry together out on the ice. All of these things combined really just help make him who he is. But, he has an intangible out there. He's just a great player, and he's a very underrated player as well. But yet, there he is leading in scoring. So let's go ahead on to the next questions. What are your thoughts on Spencer Knight? Spencer Knight has been up and down between, the AHL and the NHL. And this year it's his show. The backup is his for the taking here. And just a few thoughts that I have on him. The last game he was in, he was very solid. I was very impressed with how he played. He let in a bad goal, but he got very solid after that, and he played well. And I think the second point is not so much Spencer, but the defense seems to play even better for him when he's in the net. And they step up their game, and that's great to see. We have a great defensive core with the Panthers, and they really step up, and they really take charge, and they block a lot of shots. And the forwards as well, too, block a lot of shots out there. And, the last point is the more he plays, the better he'll get. And you could tell that so far this year. When he's in and when he starts getting dialed into a game, he's really solid and he plays well. And I think he's only going to get better with time. Again, he is the backup goalie this year, and I really like where he's at. Now we'll go ahead and go to the next question here. Question: will the Panthers repeat as Stanley Cup champions? This is probably, I would think, the number one question I've got over the past few weeks and past several months. For that example, will they repeat as Stanley Cup champions? And this is what you would call a very loaded question here, but I'm going to attempt to answer it here with several of these points. The first one is they need to stay healthy. And as almost right away, Barkov went down with a lower body injury, and he was out a couple of weeks. And then Tkachuk was out with an illness for a couple of weeks too. So, it really, and while they played well, they're better with both of them in the lineup here. And I think it's important. And I think one of the things that's very underrated about the Panthers is their training and strength and conditioning staff that they have. I think they have a really good staff on board there, because I've heard more than one player mention that, they really have them dialed in for, what, sleeping, eating, those kind of routines. Especially heard it, going on their trip over to Finland and coming back for the Global Series, that they really had them dialed in and would help them in terms of, with jet lag and things like that, but also during the regular season with strength and conditioning and doing the right things to keep healthy. And I think, injuries will happen, but I think one of the things is if you bounce back quicker if you do have proper strength and conditioning. And I think that's something that the Panthers excel at. The second point here is season is a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm sure I've heard Paul say this before, and other NHL coaches have said this before. And I know Paul has said he doesn't start looking at the standings until after New Year's. And he's right. Not that, points are important, just as important in October as they are in April when the regular season's winding up. Don't get me wrong about that. But you're going to have ebbs and flows during the season. You're going to have streaks. They're on a great streak right now, and fingers are crossed they can keep that up. But they'll probably lose 2 or 3 in a row, and it's no pushing the panic button. Just keep doing what you're doing. And one of my examples is go back to the finals last year when I thought one of those 3 losses in a row, and I think it was Game 5, where they actually played well. And Paul even acknowledged that they played well, even though they lost. They really kind of picked up the pace, and they started playing Panthers hockey. Like I said, being aggressive on the forecheck, clearing out of your own zone quickly, crisp passing, that kind of thing. They played well, even though they lost that game here. And I think those are things that Paul looks for during the season here, is seeing the chemistry and seeing them playing well. And I think it's really important. And the third point here is staying focused. Now, there's a lot to be said for that. And I think that's one of the primary responsibilities, I think, of an NHL head coach, is to help his team stay focused and keep your eyes on the prize here, so if you will. And I think that's something that Paul does very well. As you guys are all aware, as Panthers fans, it's not Club Med when you go in for a practice with the Panthers. Okay. Paul puts you through a workout each and every time. You're not going to sit there and be leaning on your stick. He has them going the whole time. And I think that helps them stay sharp, that stay focused and stay dialed in. So a lot to be said on staying focused. And a lot of that, it ends up falling on Paul Maurice, which he does an exceptional job as in my opinion. And the last one, control your own destiny by playing well. So many times at the end of the year, you're scoreboard watching. Oh, you need the Rangers to lose, or you need the Devils to win, or this or this. Don't put yourself in that position. You control your own destiny by playing well and winning. If you scoreboard watch, what are you really doing? You're taking your point number 3 is to stay focused, and part of that point is to play well. And there's going to be a lot of games the Panthers will play well but lose this year, and I think that's one of the things that Paul looks for, as long as they're playing well, is that they can control their own destiny by playing well. But I want to thank everybody who, and that was one of the most submitted questions I had. So let's go ahead and go on to the next one. Question: what are your thoughts on a Winter Classic or Stadium Series in Miami at Lone Depot Park versus the Bolts? Okay, wow, yeah, and I did get a lot of questions on that. I'm very much in favor of this. I mean, Florida hockey is fantastic, and I have always said, and this personally for me, I think the number one rival for the Panthers are the Bolts. Okay. Many of you know I live in the Tampa area and I don't care for the Bolts. That's why I follow the Panthers. And I'm very pleased to follow the Panthers ever since I've come to Florida here. And it would be fantastic for hockey, for the state of Florida, for them to go ahead and do this. Now, point number two is I prefer it to be a Winter Classic. And my reasoning for that is I think all eyes are focused on the hockey world when you have a Winter Classic. Don't get me wrong, Stadium Series are good too, but they seem a little more diluted. They seem, everybody on New Year's Day, what are they doing? All right. You're either watching football or you're going to be watching hockey. You're going to be watching the Winter Classic. And there is no better showcase for the NHL, I think, personally, than the Winter Classic. Now, one of my other points is this. I think a baseball stadium is much better for viewing than a football stadium. And I'll give you an example here. In 2011, I was living in Ohio at the time, and I got tickets. My friend knows somebody with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I got what I thought were great tickets for the 2011 Winter Classic, all right? And it was held at what was called then Heinz Field, which I thought, okay, this is great. I looked at where our seats were, and man, I said, you know what? I brought two of my children with me. I said, man, these are fantastic. I mean, these are just absolutely spot on. I'm so looking forward to this, all right? Well, they were fantastic seats for football. But for a hockey rink in the middle of a football field, we pretty much, I'm going to say when the action was down our end, we could see some of it. But for the most part, we had to watch the scoreboard. And the scoreboard was great because you got to see the view on TV. But without that, you really couldn't see what was going on. And I talked to a lot of people who said probably if you're up about maybe another, another section up, you have much better seats and a much better vantage point to be able to see some things. But you really kind of had to be on the side. If you were on the ends or in the back or in the upper deck, even in the upper deck, players are so small, it was hard to discern who they are. So this is why I would say it would be better for a baseball stadium, much better for a baseball stadium for viewing than for a football stadium. And this comes from personal experience. Now, I know a lot of people that went to they had a stadium series against the Flyers down at Heinz Field and sat in the upper deck. And they said they really enjoyed it. And they said they thought their view was great. But I can tell you again, looking at some of the footage from some people from their iPhones and stuff that they shot from the upper deck, I mean, it was very hard to discern players, who they were, and where the puck was. So all in all, it's something I would highly love for them, the NHL, to do. It would be great. I would definitely go to something like that, and having it at Lone Depot Park would be great because, again, that's an enclosed roof. The NHL can take care of the ice conditions there, and it could be very tolerable for weather. Now, when we went in 2011, the weather, you expected on New Year's Day, especially up north, to kind of be chilly. It was 40 degrees and raining. It was about as miserable as you can get to watch an outdoor event. It could not have been any more miserable. So let's go ahead and move on to the next question here. Thoughts on the Global Series in Finland. Now, I did have a podcast on the Global Series in Finland, but I do want to go ahead and just because I've gotten some more questions about that, so I thought I would go over this here. First and foremost, it was great for our Finnish players, for Barkov, Lundell. It was fantastic for them. They got to play in front of family and friends, and especially Barkov, he was in his hometown. I mean, how much better could it get for somebody? And as you saw, Barkov rose to the occasion in that first game. He was stellar in both games, but he really rose up to the top in the first game. I thought he did fantastic. And of course, it's great exposure for the Panthers because, we're in a small market. we acknowledge that, and not as well known as some of the other teams, even Tampa. Tampa's in a larger market. So it's great exposure for them. And the other thing is, I know a lot of people have said, that they poo-poo people going over to Europe for these NHL series, for especially for the team and everything, for the players, and it's a lot of fatigue involved. Well, I think the Panthers had almost 3 or 4 days off before the back-to-back games, and then after them, they had 4 days off as well. Paul Maurice did a fantastic. Nothing like the first day back. He let players get their legs back, get adjusted back to time, get over jet lag, and then they had a light workout the other day, and then the day after that was a full-on practice. So they did that well, and also, Paul followed up by doing well and not pushing things, and you could see that it has boded very well for the Panthers. They played well since they've come back from the break here. So let's go ahead on to the next question here. Question: should the NHL expand to Atlanta? Wow. Now, I have to say this. I watch a lot of hockey podcasts. One of my favorites is Cats and Bolts. I got to say that. My man Rod and Serena, they just knock it out of the park each and every time. And this is one of the questions that they had recently, and I've gotten this question a lot myself too. And the first thing I have to say, Atlanta's already had 2 teams. They've had 2 chances at this. They had the Flames and the Thrashers. So I'm going to say no, because even if you got a stadium, everything's great. I mean, that's fine. But you know what? No, you've had 2 bites at the apple. Let's move on here. And as a possibility, I would think Houston would be a possibility. As you know, many years ago, Gordie Howe, I think, played for the Houston Aeros from the WHL. People seem to be interested in hockey in Houston, and I'm like, why not give them a shot? I think they have an arena down there. And I think the other choice that I think people need to consider as well, too, is Quebec City. I believe they have a nice stadium up there. There's been NHL games played up there. I think the fan base is up there. I think they'll support them. I would really be in favor of them being able to expand up there. So those are my thoughts on that, especially. But for Atlanta, I'm going to say absolutely no. That ship has already sailed for them. Let's go ahead on to the next question here. Why do players want to play for the Florida Panthers? Now, I've had this question in many different, it asked me many different ways, but basically the same thing was, why do they want to come and play for the Florida Panthers? What sets us apart? And I went through and I did a deep dive, and I found several things here that I want to go over with everybody. Now, the first, great chemistry, especially in the locker room. You can't underestimate how great chemistry plays a part in a team's success over a season. And this is something, it's been said by multiple players that they really get along well with each other. And it's very rare. Usually you find some contention in the locker room. One player doesn't like another player or this. That's not to be found with the Panthers locker room. Not to say that there isn't, but publicly, everything that I've read, and I read all our great writers out there, there's nothing in there like that. There's a lot of great chemistry. They really get along well with each other, and they really genuinely like each other. And the second point in this is Paul Maurice. I followed Paul for years, and I've loved his coaching style, and I could not tell you how thrilled I was when he got to the Panthers. And I said it under my breath. I said, he's probably going to be the one to lead them to a cup. I wish I had that recorded. I didn't record that, but I did say that. And, I was a great fortune teller because, of course, last year they did. No questions asked. You're going to work hard for if you are a player under Paul Maurice, you're going to work hard. You're going to practice hard. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, okay? He asks a lot of his players, but I'll tell you what, the system that he has down and the way he does things better than any other NHL coach out there, he's so dialed in. He knows what he's doing, and he gets great mileage out of each and every player. Players want to play for him. They like him. He's great with the assistant coaches and getting line combinations together. He almost always puts out a great lineup. You see very few times I think he ever makes a real mistake when he's pairing up lines and getting line combinations out there. He does such a great job. And also a lot is to be said too for the assistant coaches for the Panthers. They really are dialed in with Paul. They're on the same page with him, and it really shows and it really works. Now, the third thing, I think it's it's not a moot point. It is important. There is no state income tax in Florida. When you're making salaries like normal working population makes, it matters. But especially, if you're making $3 or $4 or $5 million a year, it really matters. There's no state income tax, so that's more money in their pockets. So who wouldn't want to work down here? Plus, more often than not, we have great weather down here in the state of Florida too. So the other thing is, and I heard this from several of the great media people out there who follow the Panthers, make the point that smaller market means less pressure. Okay. We're not in New York. We're not in Chicago. We're not in Los Angeles. Okay. And even Tampa. Right. There are in Toronto, I'll give you a real high pressure market. Toronto. Okay. We're not. It's a smaller market. There's less pressure. Do yourself a favor. All right. Go to George Richardson from Florida Hockey Now, Alex Baumgartner, Colby. Go out there and follow some of the Q&A that they have in the locker room, okay? They are so great with the players. That's one thing that has really impressed me about how the press covers the Panthers, especially, those guys who I just mentioned there. They do a great job with this. They're very thoughtful with their questions when they ask them. And I think the players respect that and honor that. And they know that there's not that scrutiny and that pressure that there is on them, and say in a market like Toronto or New York or Boston or Los Angeles or Chicago. Okay. They really are very laid back with how they approach their Q&A with the players. The players respect that and they respond in kind. And you look at some of the Q&A, for example, I saw Matthew Tkachuk is almost always available. He's just a great guy. And he loves interacting with the press. He loves interacting and answering their questions. And he does such a great job. And more often than not, a lot of the team members do as well. So a smaller market means less pressure. I think a lot of players really buy into that. They love that. I think it really helps them out. Let's go ahead and move on to the next. How do I submit a question? Okay. That's a great question in and of itself here. All right. Let's go ahead and, submit your questions to email. My email address is FloridaPanthersDen@gmail.com, and put in the subject Florida Panthers Den mailbag question. All right. Now, for those of you that go ahead and do submit a question and that I use here on the broadcast, for those questions that I select for the broadcast, I'm going to send you a bag of Florida Panthers Den swag: pen, keychain, stickers, magnet. One lucky winner each month. 2024 Stanley Cup Florida Panthers glass. I got this. This is from Fanatics. This is brand new. Or to win this 2024 Stanley Cup Champions Florida Panthers mug. So I've also been getting a lot of questions about the Florida Panthers in terms of TV. And a lot of people are out, I can't find the game. How do I watch the game? Okay. I'm going to refer you back to one of the podcasts that I did recently. And let's see if I can go ahead. Okay, I'll refer you to watch this podcast that I did on the Prowl, How to Watch the Florida Panthers This Season, Episode 7. Gotten a lot of great compliments on this. This really gives you all the options on how to watch the Florida Panthers. And I especially pay attention if you're out of market like a lot of us are. So I live in the Tampa area. I catch a lot of the games on ESPN+, but I also talk about NHL Center Ice. And they're on channel 769 to 788, I think. And the NHL Network is on channel 215. But definitely, you want to take a look at this episode that I did. It's episode 7 on the Prowl, How to Watch the Florida Panthers This Season. This will really help you in terms of being able to watch the Panthers. I can't say enough about that. I want to thank you guys for tuning in this week. They're on a great roll right now. As of this broadcast, they've won 7 in a row. We're going to be going this week to Sunrise. We're looking forward to that very much so. We'll be there Thursday. Hopefully, maybe we might meet some of you while we're at the game. I'm going to be doing a little bit of filming at the game as well. So look forward to that. We're really going to enjoy that. And like I said, we have partial season tickets, and we're going to be going down for about 11 games this year. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. As always, guys, remember, it's a great day for Florida Panthers hockey. Time to hunt.